This is Geeks Unleashed, episode 38.
Oh man, our book club was so good this month. I'm pretty sure this is probably my favorite book club that we've done.
I normally think that everyone. Hello, welcome to Geeks Unleashed, episode 38. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jasmine.
Each week we cover the news of the week and we pick a couple of things to review that caught our fancy in TV, comics, movies and games. But for this week's podcast episode, though, we'll be skipping the news for American Black History Month and we'll be giving you 3 reviews, which are Noughts Crosses Season 1 from the BBC, our pilot season review, which is Dear White People Season 1, Episode 1, and Bitterroot Volume 1 from Image Comics.
And spoiler warning, this is a review show. So if you have not had a chance to watch Noughts Crosses, 6 episodes of that, or Dear White People, or read the first volume of Bitterroot, you might want to pause this and come back later. And then at the very end of the episode, we'll give you a couple of recommendations of our own.
So one episode of stuff this week, Jasmine. Last week we I think we killed ourselves. We did 3 things last week.
Oh man, last week we had three totally separate days of recording. It was brutal. On top of me being frozen. So
that feels so long ago now. Probably not to you, but
yeah, no, it does. Like it's super weird because it's like, I mean, today it was 80 degrees and it's like, this is ridiculous. Last week I was freezing everything. Like everything was so cold and now it's 80 degrees outside and I was sweating. Like it's ridiculous. But it goes to show like we're definitely not used to those kinds of temperatures here because 70s, 80s in February, like that's normal for me. So this is my normal weather versus the 7-degree weather that we had last week.
But yeah, so last week what happened was we guested on the Pop Culture Philosophers YouTube channel on Thursday.
That PCP Army, those are some crazy guys. They kept asking weird questions. Like good weird questions, but they were asking some weird questions.
They were really welcoming as well, like in the comments.
Yeah, they were really thankful.
Nice. I thought it was funny that one of them thought I was Australian. I was like, but no, it was really nice to be welcomed on the channel, and it was amazing sort of pop culture chat, and it was
we literally talked about everything from like music to soundtracks to comics that changed lives to favorite movies, that kind of thing.
And then on Friday we skipped Friday. We went Saturday. We recorded our weekly podcast episode, and then on Sunday night we were back again for our book club.
Oh man, our book club was so good this month. I'm pretty sure this is probably my favorite book club that we've done.
I normally think that everyone we do.
Yeah.
But, I really enjoyed doing V for Vendetta, but this was good. Yeah. So because of last week's podcast, because of something we reviewed last week, it prompted us to change our format this week. And so we reviewed Black Cotton issue 1, which we weren't keen on.
For a variety of reasons. So be sure to check out episode 37 to figure out why.
Yeah, but one of the things we were pro on was the concept. However, the concept's already been done previously. So jumping straight into this week's review, which is Noughts Crosses, the first season from the BBC in the UK, and I believe it's recently come out on the Peacock in America.
Yes, you can stream it for free on Peacock.
Change can be intoxicating, but we must be careful not to become too homogenized. It's time we regained order. I urge you, Noughts and Crosses alike, to protect your identity. There is strength in difference.
So it's only 6 episodes, and it's based off a series of novels by Mallory Blackman. They're UK novels, like she's a UK British author, Black British author as well, and it's set in an alternate United Kingdom, which is something like, as myself live in the UK, I found it quite interesting to see the differences. So I think a lot of the time we review mainly American type content. Occasionally we've looked at something British, but it's been mainly American. So for me, I found the whole setting really intriguing, just the sort of differences, like the fact that it wasn't the United Kingdom, it was called Albion.
Yes.
which I looked up, and actually that is what the United Kingdom used to be called. Like,
really?
yeah. So
No, I did not know that.
No, I didn't know that either. So that was interesting to me that that was an old name for our country. So obviously we were invaded by the Romans, and it's not the first time that we were conquered, and we also did our share of conquering. So as you would know, but it was really interesting to see these subtle differences, and there's several moments throughout the show where they pan across London and show like African statues, like big ones the size of buildings.
There's the one statue that's super prominent. It reminds me of the family unit statue. That's like one of the most famous landmarks in Ghana in Africa. So every time they showed that statue, it was definitely reminiscent of actual modern art that is in Africa currently. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so I enjoyed that. So anyway, the show stars a variety of cast. So newcomer is Mas Ali Baduza as Seffi. Jack Rowan plays Callum McGregor. Helen Baxendale plays Meggie, which is Meggie. It's got that sort of African sound about it. I haven't actually looked it up, but Maggie McGregor and Patterson Joseph as the Home Secretary Kamal Hadley. I loved Patterson Joseph in Timeless. You've heard me going about Timeless before.
Yes, I've never seen it though.
so good. What I loved actually was when it got cancelled that they did bring it back for a TV movie to wrap things up. So
yeah,
it is good when a network recognises there's a fan base out there. So,
yeah, well, Kripke has moved on now to The Boys, so.
Josh Dillon plays the older brother Jude McGregor. Bonnie
Mbuli?
Yeah. I was going to struggle there. And plays Jasmine Hadley, who is Kamal's wife. Ian Hart as Ryan McGregor.
I love him.
There's other people in the show as well, but sort of predominantly
these are the main guys.
The main cast. What we didn't realise until we were preparing was, although it is set in London, it was filmed predominantly in South Africa, which I thought was pretty cool, to be honest. And I guess that helped to bring in that African influence into the show. So when episode 1 starts, which I know comparing medias like TV shows versus comics is very hard.
Yeah.
Because in a TV show you can have a 2-minute scene, like they did at the beginning, where a 2-minute scene in a comic could be a whole first issue.
Right.
So in the opening moments of Noughts Crosses, we get the alternate United Kingdom setting by showing that Africa colonized the United Kingdom over 700 years ago, and obviously that's now why it's not called the United Kingdom as we know it, and it's still under African rule. And so how it works is it's sort of its own colony where it has its own prime minister, but throughout the show there's constant references to having to get sign off from Africa. Mm-hmm. So although it's a colony in its own right, it hasn't sort of broken away from Africa. They have to constantly go back to Africa if they want to do anything too extreme.
Now, I did have a beef with that because it annoys me when people think of Africa as a country when Africa is a continent built of many, many, many countries. Now, again, this is fiction, but that was the one thing that I couldn't let go of throughout the entire 6-episode run, was how they kept referring to Africa like it was one solid kind of nation.
I guess we don't know
because they didn't explain that when they did the little graphic at the beginning about Africa colonizing Europe and the UK. It was just I don't know. I mean, to me, looking at the fashion and the way that they kind of dress, it's a very, very big Nigerian and Senegalese kind of East African vibe, but that doesn't account for the rest of Africa.
You touched on fashion. I thought actually the fashion was quite, because obviously it's set in an alternate Britain. So when there was a court case, for instance, they all put shirts on that were flamboyant,
Yes.
Where over here right now, if I went to court, I'd put on a white shirt.
Yeah.
It would be like white shirt, maybe black suit, that kind of thing.
See, that
But
was one of the things that I thought was subtle, but like the nuance in this show was phenomenal because African fashion is the like fashion of the times. So like when people put on their quote unquote Sunday best or like their fancy dress, like you call it, like they were all these like African prints. It was not just like, oh, let me put on this lace ruffle dress. No, like they put on African prints. And when Callum's parents went to his graduation for the military academy, like his mom even wore like a headdress, like an African headdress, and she's a white lady. And it was just kind of like, it makes sense. If they were the dominant culture or if they were the dominant sort of oppressor, so to speak, or colonizer, that their traditions and their fashion and all of those things that they brought with them would then become the dominant things in this new Albion place.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense too.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little reference in the show. So the older brother Jude is talking to Callum at one point about getting a job, and Jude says to Callum about using sort of black sounding names, and that made me just think about how many times have we heard that the other way around about black or Asian people having to take white people names to make themselves more socially acceptable, or whatever it is. And it's really weird because I'd sort of come across someone recently who, nothing to do with the podcast, but an Asian person using a white sounding name.
Yeah.
And I didn't question it or anything. That was, but like it was actually, it was last week before watching this actually. And while watching this, I kind of thought back to it was like an email exchange. And I thought back to that email exchange, and I was like, it still goes on now, like an Asian person thinking I'll take this name because it's going to just help me.
Oh yeah, they commonly have what they call an American name, at least here anyway. Yeah,
or say over here like an English name or whatever it is, and so hearing that just made me think it's kind of weird to see it flipped around, and for me, like being the white guy on this podcast, like for me to actually to talk about, sort of jump back actually right to the very beginning of this podcast. So obviously, like I said, we got the groundwork for the alternate Britain, and then it goes to a street scene where we've got Callum and Jude and a few other of their white friends, doing street racing, which I thought was quite a cool opening, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then the police show up, and they all have to sort of go their separate ways. But they all get cornered by two black policemen. And this is something that we talked about in Black Cotton, that they kind of just jumped straight into that with no setup and not understanding why the black policeman was going after the white woman. Other than reading the synopsis online, if you'd have just picked this up on the shelf, you'd be thinking, what on earth is going on? But with this, so you'd had the groundwork, you'd sort of seen all these white people were, you wouldn't necessarily at this point know that they were in a lower class position, but it was white people sort of essentially breaking the law by doing street racing, and then two black people show up initially questioning, and then it leads to a confrontation, and they're sort of doing some they're filming them on their smartphones and things like that, which is obviously things you hear about now. And then unfortunately the black policeman does hit the white person, and that white person ends up going to hospital. And actually, me and you were comparing that with Black Cotton last week, saying the family instantly got involved, but that you didn't see any of that. There was no, in fact, when later on in the hospital, the family are there with their child in hospital. They literally no one's going to see them because no one cares. So, which is
right, because they play it up as, since they're in charge, which is definitely more in line with the way that things work here, like in the real world, unfortunately. The cops are protected by the government, and the story that the government releases is that the kid that's in the hospital attacked the cops. So the government says that the cops were defending themselves, and basically there's like one viral video that shows the cop hitting the kid, and it kind of looks like a club, like a billy club or something, hitting the kid and knocking him unconscious. But yeah, it's definitely, to me, this feels more realistic, to where it's basically sort of state sponsored. Like the city is behind you, the state is behind you, the government is behind you, even though you are in the wrong for what you did to that kid.
So, like, initially watching this, it did make me feel like it's kind of weird to watch it where it's the other way around for me. Even TV and all media like will play on, like you said, the real world element of the other way around, you know, where white people are the majority and stuff like that. There's very rarely do they ever play into the white person being the minority, and if it happens, it's more just because of a social interaction rather than because they've just gone into a country, you know, it's like, you know, or gone into a different town where it's the other way around. So, but even then, if they are in another town, it's in a country where it still is like if it's in the UK or America, like, you know. But anyway, so it's kind of weird to see for me the other way around, and it does. I would say this whole show is quite thought provoking for anyone that's interested in seeing it the other way around. But
it's interesting to me the way that they played it. So like later after, you know, the kid, his name is Danny, he's in the hospital. But when they play it up between the two main characters who are Callum and Sephi, when they see each other again, and now again, Sephi is the daughter of the prime minister, so she is a cross, and then Callum is a knot. And she's like, well, no, but you know, on the news they said that he attacked the cops. And Callum is like, no, I was there. Like, he didn't attack the cops attacked him. He was not provoking the cops. And she was like, well, why would they lie about that? And I think that they do that part really well, because that is usually how it works. Like, in minority groups, we kind of all have the same conversation with our families, with our kids, like with everyone, where it's kind of like, listen, man, if anything happens and you get pulled over by the cops, it's yes, sir, it's no, sir. Even if you don't really believe that with any conviction, you say it because you don't want to give them a reason. But it always goes back to other people that were not part of the situation, or that don't really understand how like the systematic racism or systemic racism works. This is how systemic racism works. It's because the system is designed to keep you in a lower position so that the people that are in power stay in power. And I thought that they did that so well. I mean, that was one of the things that I loved so much about this series, is that they take actual policies, because they actually mention stop and frisk at some point, which has been a policy that has put a whole bunch of Black and brown kids like in jail and behind bars and in prison. And it's just like, at one point, I think it's in one of the much later episodes, probably episode 4, where there's a trial and Callum is testifying, and he's like, I've probably been stopped 300 times by the cops. And everybody in the courtroom is like, what? That's crazy. And he's like, no, I mean, I get stopped walking down the street. I get stopped when I'm hanging out with my friends. I get stopped all the time just because of who I am, like just because of the color of my skin.
And that particular court case, so Kamal, who's the father of Sephi, actually it's probably worth mentioning this now. Callum and Sephi were friends as children. We don't see that in the show, but it's referenced, and they meet again as adults. So Callum's mother, Maggie, she works for the Hadleys, the Prime Minister and his wife and the children, and she's been sort of their housekeeper and almost like surrogate mother to the children. She's helped bring up the children, and almost to the point of she's kind of each one of their members of the family is confident. She kind of has secrets that they all tell her. They all like, oh, Maggie, don't tell so and so. Like, Maggie, don't tell so and so. And she must have literally like, be thinking, yeah, I'm not going to say anything because you all tell me stuff.
Yeah,
like,
but that's also really important too, because you see films like and some, you know, sometimes there's criticism that comes through because it seems like Hollywood only rewards film and TV that shows Black pain. So like we only get to be popular when we're playing slaves or if we're playing maids or, you know, that kind of thing. And at one point in the series, after Maggie has done all of this work, she has been a vital part of the entire like family's upbringing, where Jasmine gets really mad at her and says, you're nothing but the help. And I was like, see, that's the kind of shit right there. Like, that is what is so frustrating, because you feel like you're making headway, and maybe even get to the point where you think they treat me differently because they can actually see me for who I am. And then they go and say some stupid shit like, oh no, your opinion doesn't matter because you're just the help. Yeah. And I was like, that kind of nuance. And there was an episode where, I think it's a second episode, when they're at the party, or maybe it's the first episode. Callum cuts his finger on a piece of glass, and Steffi gets him a Band-Aid. The freaking Band-Aid is dark, like black skin, which is something that no one ever kind of pays attention to. Like, when we get Band-Aids were originally meant to blend in with white skin, which is why Band-Aids are the color that they are currently, like in the real world. So I thought that little detail, and it happened so early in the episode. It was basically a throwaway scene. Yeah. But it was like, if this is the level of nuance and detailing that they have put into this series, then this series is miles and miles and miles better than Black Cotton ever like thought it could be. Just because like that is something even I would not have thought of. But like I thought that was an amazing detail to put in there, that the Band-Aids are meant for dark skin, not for light skin.
Yeah, do you know, for around the 6 episodes, there's so much that happens. So each episode is an hour long, which I know in America, because the BBC has no adverts. So I guess if it was over there, I don't know. With the Peacock, do you have to?
Well, if it was over
adverts?
here, it would be on a premium network probably. So like stuff on Stars or HBO would probably run about, because I think they ran about 55 minutes, 50 to 55 minutes.
Did you have when you watched on the Peacock? Did you have adverts or
yes,
not?
Because I have a free account.
Okay, so yeah, but how do they do it? Do they front load them, or do you have it broken up when you're watching it?
It's broken up.
Okay,
so just like you're watching it on regular TV.
So yeah, but you'll still get the full hour then plus adverts.
Yeah. So probably with the advertisements, it comes out to about, I'd say maybe like, actually right at an hour, because with the Peacock, it's different than Hulu. Hulu sometimes has like 2.5 minutes of commercials if you have the lower end Hulu account. Yeah. But with this one, the longest run of ads was a minute. So you only had 60 seconds, and they broke it up 5 times. So yeah, so I would say it's right at about an hour.
Trying to keep it short then, I guess. So that way it was, I think it comes up to about, I think it is like 57, 58 minutes in most times. So I guess that allows Peacock to shove in a couple of adverts here and there to keep it up to an hour. But even though, so what I was going to say is with the 6 hours, it is 6 full hours, which I guess if it was on a cable TV channel in America, or even like if it was on one of our advertising channels,
it'd be 45 minutes.
Yeah, it'd be 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So I would say, although it was 6 hours, you're probably looking at maybe sort of a 7
for all 6 episodes. Yeah.
So there's a lot of content in here. I probably would argue that we could have maybe done with an extra episode. Only because in the later half of the show,
after episode 4, everything speeds up way too fast.
It goes too quickly. Yeah. So I think they spend the first 4 episodes really laying the ground.
Yeah.
They really drive home how poor Callum's family is, how bottom of the food chain white people are.
Yeah.
You've got this underground militia, which
without like overselling it or overdoing it. It's the way that they do it all through storytelling. It is not, there's never a narrator that comes in. You can see the differences, and you can see how society is a little bit different than what we have now.
Yeah, so it's all done, I would say, very well.
Yeah.
Like I say, the first 4 episodes, they're not slow, but
no, not at all.
Happen. A lot happens, but not enough that it's overwhelming. Yeah. And so there's many things that happen. So Callum and Seffi's relationship goes from pretty much into relationship status straight away.
Yeah, right away.
So, I mean, he sees her across the party, and he clearly is not a racist. He hasn't. So where some of the white characters clearly have race issues, and obviously a lot of the black characters have race issues, but he looks across the party and he sees her straight away, and he's like, you can see he's like, wow, like, who's this? And then the scene that you mentioned about the glass cutting and stuff, and they're holding hands or they're doing it, it's all done deliberately, and sort of by the end of the first episode, they're kind of, you know, they're there, like, you know, the groundwork's been set for a relationship, and these characters, and you know, although they're referring to sort of noughts and crosses for black and white people, and you know, you've got your Callum and your Seffi, but then it clearly is a Romeo and Juliet style story.
Yes, 100%. It is very, very, very much a Romeo and Juliet retelling.
It's like you say, it's a modernization of Romeo and Juliet, but rather than the Montagues and Capulets, we've got noughts and crosses. Right. And actually, the divide of the Montagues and Capulets is much bigger because it's black people and white people, where in Romeo and Juliet it was just the two families, where you know, if Romeo and Juliet had gotten out of the city, they might have been all right. They would have been okay. So obviously that didn't happen, and so that story goes on throughout the whole of the show. Their sort of their love, and then we've also got Seffi's father Kamal, who is
very politically ambitious.
And probably the only way to really describe him is almost like a black Donald Trump. Like he
is very, very much a nationalist. He wants to keep things the way they are. He does not believe in integration. He is for segregation all the way. Yeah.
And he, like you said, the politically ambitious. So there is a prime minister at the beginning, but he has an overall plan to get rid of her, which succeeds. And he becomes prime minister.
She actually seemed reasonable. Like, she was introducing a new bill that was going to decriminalize interracial marriage, and he was like, absolutely not, that is not going to work, we can't have that.
So there ends up they end up in hospital because Jasmine, Kamal's wife, has a drinking problem, and the whole thing about her falling out with Meggie and firing her, I think it all sort of gets to her because Seffi also falls out.
Well, she realizes that she lost her friend too.
Yeah. I think although she referred to Meggie as the help, that actually was her closest friend.
Yeah, she was just being callous.
Yeah, and in a moment of anger, she fired her friend, and then her arrogance couldn't go and get her to resolve it. But Meggie comes back because even though Meggie had been trodden on, she equally, I think it's
clear that she loves the family.
Yeah,
like, she might not agree with everything that they do, but she loves them. And Maggie is very, throughout the whole series, she's very much trying to tell her sons, like, look, I know your dad had a history with this, like, terrorist organization, which I assume they're kind of like that Irish organization.
Oh, IRA.
Yes, so that's kind of what that organization reminded me of, that the father used to belong to. He doesn't belong to anymore, but she is very much preaching, like, don't be like that. Don't let hate do this to you. And I thought that she's pretty much the conscience of the series, because no matter how badly she was treated or the wrongs that she sees, she's basically like, hate has no place in any of this. Like, if I'm upset with you, it's because you did something that was inappropriate. It's not because of the color of your skin or because you're a knot or a cross. Like, so she was probably, honestly, my favorite character in the entire series. I just thought she was the most tragic, unfortunately, because she could be the most balanced. And the people who tend to have the widest frame of vision tend to be the most miserable because they can see things before they kind of actually play out.
Yeah. So she arranges for Jasmine to go to hospital. That in turn leads Jude, who is part of this militia, who
is a big naive idiot, by the way.
He starts to come around towards the end, but unfortunately, it's a bit too late. He's very pro white people,
but it just goes to show how, again, when you're kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked, eventually you want to kick back. And I think that he is a prime example of just the unfortunate person that has been mistreated over and over and over again by the state. And finally he's like, screw it. Like, if you are not going to see that what you're doing is wrong, then I'm going to make you see it. And he just goes about it the complete wrong way.
So he plants a bomb in the hospital, which so happens to be the bomb that Jasmine, Kamal, Sefi, and the sister Melina are all at.
Minerva.
Minerva, Minerva are all at. And then Callum comes home. He basically tells Jude he loves Sefi, and then Jude's like, there's something I've got to tell you.
Yeah.
And they leg it to the hospital, and as they get there, unfortunately, the bomb goes off, and that's where it begins this speed up towards the end. And the court case comes around, but actually, it's not Jude that gets arrested. It's their father, Ryan.
Well, Callum gets arrested first because he runs his mouth, unfortunately, and he implies that he knows who planted the bomb, and he tells this to Sefi, and of course Sefi goes back to her father because she's also naive in thinking that, you know, that everybody is trying to do the right thing, which is obviously not the case. And I think actually the way that they play Sefi's naivete is very on point with, you know, some of these people who consider themselves in real life to be like fake woke, where it's like, no, things don't work out that way, and it's not like that. And it's like, well, of course it's like that. Like how would you know when this has never directly affected you? And so to me, Sefi is the epitome of like one of those people that's like, no, the textbook says that it's supposed to work out as XYZ, and the people who've actually had the lived experiences are like, honey, no, that's not it doesn't play out in the way that the textbook says it plays out.
Yeah. So, well, throughout the show, you can see slowly she's sitting there hearing the lies, like, you know, in classroom, getting told, well, this and this happened, or in history, or this, you know, we do it.
But they say there's a saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And for the first half of this season, Sefi ends up saying things to the wrong people with the best of intentions, but those intentions end up getting people hurt.
Yeah, I think her journey from where she started to, you know, the upper class black family to where she ends, and we'll talk about that later. But anyway, so she leads to Callum getting arrested, who gets the hell beaten out of him by the cops, because that's how they get there, interrogate him to get their confession. Which leads Ryan, the father of Callum and Jude, to turn himself in and confess to him.
Yes.
That leads to this court case where he, behind the scenes, Jasmine, Kamal's wife, she regrets the firing, and she sees the two events linked, as Ryan did this in retaliation for Maggie losing her job, which unfortunately isn't the case, but they keep quiet and don't ever want Jude to be the person found out. And Jasmine and Sefi come in, and Jasmine says she'll pay for the
pay for a really good lawyer.
Yeah, for a good lawyer. And there's other things as well, because she's had enough of Kamal, and there's a lot of, unfortunately, their marriage isn't in a good place. We won't cover that now, but and then it is brilliant though, like, actually, that she pays for the court case, also the lawyer, because when Kamal later on gets the email through and the bill comes through, he's absolutely furious. Like, but yeah, so in the court case, it comes out about, like you said earlier, about the all the times that the white people have got stopped, you know, 300 times and stuff like that. Ryan doesn't get completely off the hook, but he does get off the death penalty. And I think the judge is sympathetic to how white people are treated, but ultimately she's like, well, you planted a bomb that killed 3 people. Like, there's no getting away with the fact that you murdered
we got to
3
punish
people.
you some kind of way.
And to be honest, I do get that. Like, you know, someone plants a bomb and kills 3 people, you can't.
They shouldn't get off scot-free. Period.
Okay. You can't just say, look, okay, you're fed up and been trodden on, but you've got to protest your way in a different manner, which doesn't involve people dying, which is actually something that I thought about when we were reading March last week about the non-violent protests, and there unfortunately there was no non-violent protests. Actually, no, there was one right at the very end when Kamal becomes prime minister. The white people that come in chains in the crowd,
covered in fake blood.
Covered in fake blood. And that was the only time I saw non-violent protests used. Other than that, all of their protests are violent. Like everything they do, and it is very difficult for people in power to listen to people that when all they're doing is violence, because that unfortunately detracts from their message, because they're seeing the violence rather than what their message is. So I think that's where March was actually a lot stronger in terms of delivering their message, because it was the non-violent way of putting across their message.
But I also think that just goes to show the difference in the individual leading the movement. Right.
Oh yeah.
Don, who is the guy who's in charge of this liberation movement, the LM, he's unhinged. He's definitely leaning more toward domestic terrorism than he is to a person who's actually trying to foster change. But you have people like I have so many notes, but like with the protesting kind of stuff, like there are people that are trying to go about it in a diplomatic manner, and they kind of get overlooked, because even the prime minister, before she's ousted, she's very much like, no, we can't keep doing things that get Crosses approval. We have to work to do things that get not approval, because we're the same country and we need to be representative of both classes of people. And I just the way that they kind of play that up is super interesting, and the way that the episodes sort of get more and more insidious. It's like the series kind of gets deeper and deeper and deeper with each episode that passes, and by the fourth episode, that's finally the episode where Kamal actually admits, like, the issue here is we don't want you mixing with our race. And that is something that has plagued, especially like in modern times, like that has plagued the American South and the conservative movement here in the US. It's because for some reason, now this is completely unfounded in my opinion, some reason conservative white people believe that like other races are trying to completely eradicate the white race. And it's like, no one is trying to do that. What everyone else is trying to do is we want our fair shot. That we don't want to eradicate any other race. Like, we're fine coexisting with everybody else, but we want the same opportunities as everybody else. Like, that's what this boils down to. But I thought that was really, really a powerful moment in the series when Kamal just flat out says, like, basically, like, interracial relations is an awful thing, because that's how we lose our sense of culture or our sense of history. And it's like, damn, this show really, really makes you think, because it takes actual concepts and actual problems. Like, for instance, they have a term called blanker, which I'm assuming is the equivalent of the use of the N-word. And when they use it against white people, there's a part in the second episode where Seffi accidentally says it when she's running away from a protest with Callum. And the look on his face when she says it out loud is just a look of betrayal. Like, I cannot believe you just said that. Like, she didn't say it to him. She was saying it to someone else. But at the same time, it's like, I can't believe you would even use that word. And that is also one of the things that like comes up all the time, especially in America, where it's like white people get tripped up because it's like, oh, we caught you and you said the N-word. And they're like, no, I didn't mean it that way. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, there's no good way to use that word if you are not Black, basically. So I just love the way that the series did all of that. Like, you took that and you made it your own. You came up with a fictional word for your group of people, but like, it's used to great effect. You took the whole mixing of the races to your kind of you played it to your alternate reality and you use that to great effect. The way the background that went into this series to give you the illusion that society has actually flipped is phenomenal. I mean, it's so great. It's so great because they pick up on all of the little subtle things that you might not necessarily think of on the surface.
I was gonna say, like, I know. So this story obviously isn't anti-white, and the author got really criticised. I looked this up, and she got criticised by white people for putting together a show that people believe was anti-white. Anyway, like, I won't go into that now, but it clearly
you don't get that sense if you actually watch the series.
Yeah, but I was going to say this is probably the first thing in media where you're actually rooting for the white people in regards to like because of racial relations. Where normally, I don't think I've ever watched anything where I'm rooting for the white person when it's the other way around. So to see it actually where the white people are pretty much low level, and when you see where they all live, and in fact the black people make references to where all the white people live, like they live in pretty much slums, and like this is
they live in the hood.
Yeah, basically, like, and it is quite strange to obviously see that, and don't get me wrong, there's probably white people that do live in places like that all over the world. But because it's really driven home the differences where you've got, I guess, because they're comparing actually. The
classism is apparent. It's completely apparent in the series.
One of the things I did want to mention actually was they only touch on it marginally. Was Ryan does have a job at the beginning of the show, and although they do drive home the fact that white people are poorer than black people, not every white person is as equal as every white person, because Ryan's boss even says, because Ryan says that we're the same, and Ryan's boss says we're not the same. I have 2 cars. I have this. I have that. You don't have this. You don't have.
He also makes reference to not giving Danny's father, time off because he thinks Danny's father's religion or whatever is irrelevant, and he's like, you should really just convert, and you should do things by the African way.
Yeah, I couldn't believe he said that as well about like doing things by the African way.
Yeah,
which is
it almost implied that his family was Jewish with the way that they did the funeral ceremony and stuff. But yeah, I thought that was super interesting too. How you did have there definitely were white people that kind of looked like they could have fit in with the crosses, or even white people that might have been crosses.
So try and bring this to a close, this review. Just come back to Seffi and Callum. So the main bulk of the story throughout the 6 episodes, Callum and Seffi, and their slow relationship build up, eventually leading to them having sex together, and then they break apart for various racial problems that they're having to do with his father and all the rest of it. Because there's the press releases that Ryan committed suicide. It turns out Ryan actually was killed in prison, and that gets discovered by Seffi and Callum in very different ways. Callum finds it out in a more violent way, while Seffi actually confronts her father, who actually admits to it in the end. And he
also said that Ryan attacked a guard again, which was not the case.
No. Yeah. But he does admit partial truth rather than the whole truth. He admits that it wasn't suicide, but there was no attack by Ryan at all. Anyway, so that leads to Callum completely pulling away from Seffi, joining the LM, which I found was so out of character for the first 4 episodes. And I just can't really see that would have happened. But
who knows what rage would do to you? I can see where they were trying to go with it, but it did feel incredibly rushed because his transition was a complete 180 from the character that you kind of just come to fall in love with from the first 4 episodes. By episode 5, it's like, I don't recognize this version of Callum at all.
And Sophie says that in episode 6. Yeah. So the LM uses Callum and manipulates him, especially their leader, because they know that he has this love for Seffi.
Right.
So they get Callum to arrange to kidnap Seffi, and he does it. And I found that the episode 6 quite difficult to watch because Callum now locks up Sephi in like a little room whilst they're trying to do a deal with Kamal to resign as Prime Minister and hand over some money, which he very reluctantly does. He doesn't want to give up his prime ministership, which he fought so hard for. But as Jasmine says, look, it's our daughter. So anyone that would question keeping their job
over their kid,
yeah. And so there's a massive confrontation in the end, and Callum, Sephi's pretty adamant that they're going to kill her. And then Jude finds that out just before the money exchange happens. So Jude does run back. It's the one time Jude actually suddenly is like, actually, this is going too far. He runs back a little bit too late. So we don't actually know, because it's all heading towards the cliffhanger of the season finale. We don't know if Jude's alive or not. So there's a confrontation between him and the leader of the LM. Gun goes off. We don't know if he survived. Callum does run out with Sephi and runs into Callum, the father, and she admits that she's pregnant. He's clearly upset by it because he's not really pro the interracial relations.
Even though he has an interracial kid out of wedlock?
Yeah, which is something that does drive a lot of his backstory as well. And because of time, we won't cover that now. But so they do escape and go off into the woods, and he rings his mom, and sort of that's kind of how it ends. Now, spoiler warning for anyone that may have read or may not have read the books and is planning to. I did do a little bit of digging in regards to the backstory of the books, not read the books. However, Callum actually dies at the end of the first book, and the TV series has decided to go a different, more hopeful route. I don't know how I'd feel. I think I'm keen to read the books. It'd be quite weird to know that actually your main character does die. So there's 5 books and 4 novels, I believe. So it'd be quite strange to see where this goes without Callum, who was so pro trying to, in a more less aggressive way in the first 4 episodes, was so pro the interact, bringing in the going against segregation, stuff like that. So
but by the time the series is over, he has helped bury a body. He has kidnapped the love of his life, and I hate it in any book, medium, TV, film, anything. I hate it when they take the strong female character and they make her pregnant, and it's like. There's no other conflict in all of the options that you had when you were writing this. There was no other conflict that you could have chosen. So instead you choose to make this character pregnant. And now it's like, I don't know. To me, that's just such lazy writing, because everything now, of course, is going to be geared toward making sure that the baby stays safe. And it's like, this is a route that we didn't have to go down. There was enough conflict in this series that you could have picked something else other than pregnancy to get the ending that we got. Anything. You could have picked anything else. I
think it annoyed me because Callum's clearly so in love with her. And to see him betray her so cold and heartlessly.
Literally treated her like shit.
Puts her in this little cell, whatever, and he's fine with himself about it.
And Judy, you watched 4 guys manhandle her and beat her. Like she had a bloody cheek by the time they took that hood off her head when she got to the cell.
And Jude does say to her about him being scared of himself because of her, because of how he's going to be with her, and he does, and he's wavering constantly, but he's wavering, and maybe he would have got there in the end, but he probably would have got there too late. I think had the pregnancy thing not come out, he wouldn't have allowed the LM to kill her. I can't see that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he would have, but I think if he had done, he would have regretted it forever. Anyway, so it was a shame that unfortunately the pregnancy was the thing that sort of pulled him back from this oblivion.
Because let me tell you something. If I was dating a revolutionary, quote unquote, and I wound up pregnant and that mofo kidnapped me, you bet your ass I wouldn't tell him shit about that pregnancy. You don't get to be a part of my life anymore. You kidnapped me. What the hell?
Yeah, but then the other thing is she's sitting in that cell thinking, how do I get out of that room? Maybe you got to say whatever you got to say. I don't know, if that was me,
I don't know. I felt like she used that little glass shard too early. She should have stabbed him and run away, as opposed to stabbing him and then like running back into the cell.
She saved the pregnancy thing until the last. That was her get out of jail free. But it annoyed me then that once she got out, she then did run off with him. I don't know. I felt like
for a show that started out so strong, the ending was not very great. The final episode was just was pretty. It was kind of disappointing.
I was disappointed that he became a bit of an arsehole at the end, and then just went with him. Like, and I get that they were pushing the love story. I just wish he could have been maybe less of an arsehole.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and maybe they could have forced him to call her. That I could have gone more with. Like him do the stuff with the LM up until that point, and then maybe him say no.
Yeah.
Like to calling her, and then maybe they could have like said, "Well, look, we're going to kill Jude then." Like,
yeah,
you know, like, we're going to kill your brother. So then he has to call her like that. That I could have gone more along with his character, wanting to look after his brother and been forced in a position where he's got to choose between his brother and he's just lost his dad. So he's like, well, I can't lose my brother as well. So you know that probably would have felt like a more natural thing for him to do. But in truth, I did really enjoy this series.
Yeah, it's really well done.
It hasn't. There's no news on whether it's been picked up, but like I say, it's based off of 5 books and 4 novels, so there's plenty of content, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes. The fact that Callum actually does at the end of the first book, how they keep him going, because everything from now on is a new story for his character. So, yeah, I'd fully recommend this, especially if you want to see something that was much better than Black Cotton in terms of how they handle this concept. So, we rated this 4 out of 5. We were really impressed with it. We'd love to see more.
All right, so moving right along into pilot season, this month we are covering Dear White People on Netflix.
Dear White People, I get that being reduced to a race-based generalization is a new and devastating experience for some of you. But here's the difference. My jokes don't incarcerate your youth at alarming rates, or make it unsafe for you to walk around your own neighborhoods.
It was created by Justin Simeon, who also wrote and directed the film of the same name. The film came out in 2014. The first season of the TV series came out in 2017. Stars, actually, some of the people that were in the film are also in the series, but we have new leads. So the lead in the series is Logan Browning. She plays Samantha White. Basically, Netflix kind of did a 10-episode, half-ish hour sort of format for Dear White People. The episodes kind of waver. So, like, the first episode was 33 minutes. I mean, they kind of run 27 minutes, 35 minutes, like somewhere between 25, 35 minutes per episode. There are currently 3 seasons available on Netflix. The 4th season is set to be released sometime later in 2021. The film actually starred Tessa Thompson as the main character. She had a different name than the character in the TV series. So basically, the show is set on a PWI, which is a predominantly white institution. It is a university. It's supposedly an Ivy League university. So basically, it's mostly white with a handful of minorities on campus. The fictional university is called Winchester University. And the story kind of starts off with tensions are starting to grow between the Black kids on campus and the white kids on campus, and that little facade of an idyllic, perfect college is finally starting to crack. So despite there not being too many Black students on campus, the ones who are there actually have a very strong kind of foundation and a strong bond. There's lots of different Black student organizations on campus, and they all kind of work together to make sure that their voices are heard and make sure that they have a space where they all feel comfortable. The series focuses on Sam White, who is played by Logan Browning, and she's a junior in media studies. She runs a campus radio show called Dear White People. And she's also the president of the Black Student Union. She also happens to be biracial. So one of the themes of the series, which kind of cracks me up. Now, I have seen 2 seasons. I have not seen season 3, but I have seen 2 seasons of Dear White People. And I think it's funny to me that they kind of stake their claim on, oh, you can't possibly be for Black students because you're dating a white boy. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't see the thread in that argument. Like, I you know, there's lots of discourse with Black people dating outside of their race, but I mean, I think that is irrelevant. But again, what do I know? So that is a thread that runs throughout the entire series of Dear White People. To me, the show, it has such an interesting mix of characters, and you get to meet most of them in the pilot episode. And everyone kind of feels significant. Even if the interactions are small at first, you know that Reggie's going to have a big part to play. You know that Calandria is going to have a big part to play. You know that Lionel is going to have a big part to play. Joelle is going to have a big part to play. Like, you can just feel the importance of the characters as you meet them in the pilot. And I think that setting this on a college campus is a good place for this, because I think that's usually, in the US anyway, that's usually the first opportunity that young adults have to kind of step outside everything that they were taught before they left home. Because for the most part, kids, unless you go to like a community college or a commuter school, most kids have left home in some aspect to either live on campus or live near campus to have their sort of college experience. So the setting is perfect for this kind of discourse, so to speak. It deals with some pretty heavy themes. Basically, the episode opens with white kids having a blackface party, which I thought was really funny. In Mark's notes, he put that he had never heard of that before, and I'm like, you are very lucky, because it is literally something that we have to talk about all the time.
So I think, like, I've heard of like people showing up, and maybe like one person showing up like to Halloween doing it themselves, but I hadn't actually heard of that being a thing, that like there's a whole party of white people just, putting like, I don't know what they put on their faces, boot polish, whatever it was, like on their, and dressing up as Black people. Like, that was something I was like, what? Like, this is a thing. Like,
yes, it is a thing. It is a thing that happened on my campus quite often when I was in college. So yeah, it's like, people shouldn't have to tell you this. Like, we shouldn't have to tell you that this is offensive.
And like, so I remember I Googled it, and I was like, there's actually quite a lot of information here about different things. Like, it did seem, from what I found, was a lot of it was American. So I'm not aware of it. It could have happened here. I don't know. I haven't gone through a thorough search of Google and every link I found. But I did mention it to my wife. I was like, this is actually like something that people.
It's a
say,
thing.
Like,
yes, it's a thing.
Do, sorry. And so I was quite taken back by it, like this whole blackface party thing. So yeah, I could see how someone might get upset by that. Like, I can't imagine a bunch of Black people dressing up as whiteface.
No, and that's the thing. Like, that's what's most frustrating about blackface is, like, let's, for instance, if we take geek culture into context, like cosplayers, right? There are so few Black characters, whether it's superheroes or anime or anything else that fits into that kind of cosplay culture, that, most of the time, if you are a person of color and you choose to do cosplay, you are most likely cosplaying someone that is not your same skin color, because, that person doesn't exist. But it's really funny because so many people will get upset and say, like, for instance, if I wanted to cosplay someone from My Hero Academia, like, somebody would tell me, like, you can't possibly be Deku because Deku's not Black. And it's like, well, yeah, no shit, Deku's not Black. Like, I get that, but he doesn't have to be Black for me to cosplay as that character. And it's like, we as people of color understand that, but for whatever reason, white people can't seem to grasp that. So, like, if a white person were trying to play Afro Samurai, right, who's voiced by Samuel L. Jackson, they would paint their whole body in that color. Or if somebody was trying to cosplay Moana, if a white girl was trying to cosplay Moana, they might paint themselves to be her same color. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Like, if you put on the outfit, we can figure out who the hell you are. You don't have to like paint your skin to match the person that you're playing.
So with that whole blackface party, we've also got the narrator, Giancarlo Esposito. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
he's so fantastic. I love him.
Pretty much everything I've seen him in: Revolution, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, The Boys. He's in so many things. I think he's a brilliant actor.
He's about to be in the next Far Cry game.
I did not know that. But anyway, so you know it's him straight away. You can't turn by his voice. I knew it by his voice.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he's introducing like the setup in a very comedic way to the whole place, which I a little bit, because I haven't never watched it before, I was a bit like, I hope this isn't like a real outright comedy.
Yeah.
But actually, other than there is humor in it, but I would say once his narration, so he narrates the beginning of every episode. And once his narration is done, though, which he does in a very comical way,
we get to the nitty-gritty.
Does come to a stop. Yeah, the comedy stops after his introduction, and then he's sort of going through the campus and telling us about the campus, gets us to the blackface party, and what was it he says just before he finishes his thing? Like,
I don't remember exactly what he says, but like it ends on and this was a motherfucker.
Let's
kick it off that way.
Yeah, and then when he said it was as he's going through it, his narration was really quite nice.
Yeah,
nice tone of voice, and even said that he said my ethnically pleasing voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then he and then he sort of gets to the blackface party, and he's like, and that's going to be a motherfucker, and I was like, whoa, where did that come from? But he does it in such a cool way. But then, I thought Logan Browning, who played Samantha White, was so strong. Like in terms of the star of the show, she was just really good, and I actually really loved her rant at the end, especially when she goes on her radio show.
No, she hijacks another radio show because hers has gotten suspended.
She, I guess, takes her radio show back, which I thought was cool as well. She walks in and they're like, you're not going on air.
It's a Dear Abigail kind of show, which is like an advice column show. And so she basically kicks that girl out and she's like, move. And the girl's like, okay.
And then she like locks the door or whatever and then just sits down and she's like, literally goes, dear white people, like literally. And she's come with fire, right? And so the reason behind that is because her friend who's got the college newspaper, he's quite a nice guy and tells her that he's gonna scoop her and because he's nice, and even she says, you want to be in reporting, like you're gonna have to not be so nice. But no, honestly, her rant though was brilliant. I'll tell you what, just for the episode alone, her sort of 2-3 minute verse on racism was so good.
Because it's so spot on. She pulls no punches, and that's what's so fantastic about this series in general. The writing is so well done. It doesn't sugarcoat anything, and it is literally like there's a point where Samantha, she's dating a white guy, which is sort of a point of contention with all of her like black cohorts and that kind of thing. And at one point she brings him to they're watching a show that's like the equivalent of Scandal, and she brings him along and he gets into an argument with Reggie, who is another main character who actually has an amazing story arc as this series progresses. And eventually he's like, you know what, this is not worth it. And so he leaves. And when he leaves, she follows him and she's like, why are you leaving? And he's like, there's no point for me to be here. And she's like, oh no, you were uncomfortable for the first time ever in your life. Like, welcome to my world. This is how I feel all the time. Granted, she was definitely being a bit callous in that moment, in that particular moment. But what she says kind of rings true. It's like, this is probably the first time in your entire life that you've ever felt like you didn't belong in a room. And she basically implied like, that's how I feel when I'm on this campus all the time. And there's a scene at the sort of early in the episode where she's in a history class and the history class is getting ready to talk about slavery. And the professor is kind of like, does anybody have any insight? And of course, she's the only Black person in the class. And she's really not paying attention. She's kind of writing her own notes. And the professor's like, anybody that may have some personal experience in this subject matter? And like eventually the rest of the class kind of turns to look at her and she's like, this shit happens to me all the time. And it's like, I know what it feels like to be the only Black face in a classroom full of people.
Yeah. Like they sort of at the beginning of the episode as well, they go to her, oh, you look like Storm, you look like this, you look like
oh my
whatever,
God, the one girl that says, what are you?
Are you? Yeah.
Well, I cannot tell you growing up how many times random people, random strangers would approach me and flat out ask me, what are you? And when I would tell them like I'm Black, they would be like, no, like you have to be mixed, like you look like you're mixed with something else, so what are you? And I'm like, that is just the rudest question in the world to ask someone that you don't even know. Like, you have no idea who I am. Why would you ask me something like that?
Yeah, like sometimes like I've had that, like with my children, like people see photos and they're like, oh, where are they from? Or where's your wife from? I'm like, fuck off. Like,
that is an appropriate response. I 100% support that response.
But I don't say that because a lot of the time that's happened more in working environment. Like, and as much as I feel that they are in the wrong for asking that question, like I clearly can't respond with that. Like in a working environment,
but it's incredibly frustrating. It's and so like the fact that they added that into there, like, what are you? And it's literally like, what are you? Not what are you mixed with? What's your heritage? Where's your family from? No, it's never like a cordial way to ask the question. People are really just rude about it, and they're like, "What are you?"
There are other ways, like, "Oh, your kids are really pretty. Oh, I love their hair." Like, you know, and that might be a softer way of getting there. It's still getting there, but it would be a slightly softer way of me knowing what they're inquiring about. You know, I mean, I've had even people just walk up to me and go, "Where's your wife from?" I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, why is that any of your business?
Yeah, like, well, what about where I'm from?
Yeah.
I've
had people argue with me growing up, especially like if I usually wear my hair up. If I wear my hair down, my hair is almost to the top of my pants. I have really, really long hair. But like, if I wear my hair down, I get stopped all the time with random people. Even now, like in my 30s, people are like, where are you? Where are you from? Like, what are you? And I'm like, I'm Black. And they're like, no, you're not. And I'm like, how are you going to sit here and argue with me and tell me what I am when I just told you what I was? Like, it's so annoying. It's so annoying. So I think Dear White People really captures sort of the quote, it captures the Black experience, but it also, in a sense, kind of captures the exotic experience, because a lot of times people kind of say stupid stuff like that, where it's like, you don't realize that what you have just said, you're kind of fetishizing like me as a person, as opposed to seeing me as an individual. But like, don't go around calling people exotic looking. Like, that's freaking rude.
I just thought this happened to me a couple of times. Like, I don't think I look at anything other than a white guy, but like I've had it a couple of times where people have done similar to, like, I can't remember where I was in London somewhere and in a shop, and this lady's like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I was like, "England." "You're not from Italy?" "No, I'm from England." "You look Italian." I'm like, "I'm English." Like, I'm English. And she goes, "Oh, but you do look Italian. You're not from Italy." I'm like, "I'm from England. Like, I'm English." So it's like, your parents Italian? "No, they're not Italian." Like,
can we stop with the questions? Like, what the hell?
And then she was like, "Where are your parents from?" I was like, "My mum is Irish." And they're like, "Oh, is that it?" "No, probably not." Like,
oh yeah, that's my favorite. Like, I get that too, where they're like, because my dad's from Somalia, so people are like, "Oh, that's why you're mixed." And I'm like, I'm not mixed. Like, Somalia is an African country. Like, my dad's Black, my mom is American, but she's also Black. Like, fuck you. Like, I'm Black. What the hell? I'm not mixed with anything.
I mean, I guess people, I don't know. They don't probably. Some people just don't have a filter. Like they have an opinion and they just want to get that opinion to you.
Yeah.
You respond in a way which.
But they
is
get
not
their
offensive.
feelings hurt if you respond in a way that it is an actual appropriate response, where it's like, first of all, it's none of your business. Like, I'm literally just trying to buy lemons. Like, why are you harassing me in the grocery store about what I am? What does it matter? Like, why is it any business of yours? And why do I owe you an explanation?
Mm-hmm. I guess we're going off topic a little bit, but that kind of point which he said in the show is quite common, and and I think that's what this show does. Actually, it highlights quite a lot of common modern things here, which I know Noughts and Crosses did highlight modern things, but they were done on the other way around.
Mm-hmm. But however, this show does it in a way where it also calls people out for doing it, like, and it makes. So like you can't tell what's going to happen with just the pilot, but like based on the pilot, the problem is white people have become uncomfortable with the Black student population sort of asking these questions and demanding, basically like equal footing, so to speak. And I think that highlights the bigger issue with sort of like racial tensions, is that problems come up when white people suddenly feel uncomfortable. And it's like the people of color have been living in this for their entire lives. And the fact that one conversation, one radio show, one something has made you this uncomfortable, that your response to being uncomfortable is to then throw a racist party. You really should be called out on that, because that's bullshit. Like, your literal response to me saying, like, dear white people, like, don't touch my hair or don't ask me what I am when I'm walking around campus, is to say, you know what, screw you, we're going to throw a blackface party because dear Black people. It's like, that's not how this works.
Yeah, they did do that as well, dear Black people, in the show. Like,
yeah, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're missing the entire point, but also you're proving my point. Like, you're proving the point of you being a racist asshole, basically.
Yeah. So it was a really good, strong pilot episode. I did watch a couple others just to get a flavour for what the show would be like. So I was a bit like you with Dexter. I deliberately stopped. I watched one or two afterwards just to get an idea, but I concentrated on the pilot, and I actually went back and watched the pilot again after I'd watched those couple, just so to stick to my strength of my decision on how I felt about the pilot. It was a very strong pilot. Yeah.
And I promise, like, it gets really heavy toward the end of the season. I was telling you that before we started recording, but season 1 is really good, and it touches on so many different, like, topics that are very prescient at the moment. So it's good. It's a good series because it does balance the humor. I think Lionel is he's the guy who's the journalist. He is probably the character that has the most leeway when it comes to being funny. He's great, but the series is filled with people being amazing. Like, everyone is so good. There it's almost like there are no weak links. Like, everybody has a purpose and everybody has some significant importance in the series.
So if anyone's listening who's seen the English TV show on Channel 4 or E4 called Skins, which finished years ago, it follows a similar setup. So in Skins, it's, if you've never watched it, it's set in the college years in the United Kingdom between sort of 16 and 18, group of friends at college, and then each episode is 10 episodes mainly for each season, and it sets up a group of friends, and then it follows them for the 10 episodes in their drama. But each episode focuses on one main character, and having watched the next couple of episodes just to get a flavour, this show will actually, so where Sam was the main character in episode 1, in the next 2 or 3 episodes, she might only appear in, say, 2 or 3 minutes of scene, or in Coco's episode, she's probably got half the episode, but she took a back seat to Coco's character, who had 90% of the screen time, and each episode will flick around showing a different main character's point of view, and which I thought was quite unique as well. In the next 2 or 3 episodes, they keep tying back into events in the first episode, and where you see Sam talking to somebody in episode 1, and that conversation even been cut short, on episode 2 and 3, you actually get to see the other half of that conversation. I thought that was quite a unique setup. So, like I said, I won't go into that now because we were just talking about the pilot. But the pilot, strong, real strong. I'd fully recommend this to anyone. I thought this was really good, really well done. Comedy was done well. It's not a comedy, but the humor in it is used well. And but the drama is probably the highest point of this. And really so it was a good show. I really liked it, to be honest. So strong budget, strong cast. So
great rating.
We rated this 4 out of 5. I'd really fully recommend it if you've not watched it. So.
Yeah. And our last review of this week, closing out Black History Month with a comic. We took on the first volume of Bitterroot. It's from Image Comics. It is written by Chuck Brown and David F. Walker. Art is by Sanford Green, Rico Renzi, and Clayton Cowles. The first volume collects issues 1 through 5. Bitterroot follows, I don't know if I'm saying this right, the Sengheir family. Basically, they're kind of like demon hunters. So they've got like this whole supernatural crime fighting streak that they do. It's set in the 1920s, early 1920s Harlem. What's really cool about this book is obviously it's completely fictional, but they do pull in actual events. One of the events that they reference is the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921, which was also an entire episode of the Watchmen series that was on HBO. That actually won several Emmys. They also bring up the KKK and police brutality. So the book is interspersed with pieces of reality, but it is basically a fictional story about this demon hunting family. I love this book because it's so deep with its tradition. So the family has sort of a matriarch. Her name is Ma Etta. Now, you don't ever want to tell older people how old they look, but if I had to guess, I would probably guess Ma Etta is like 92 years old. That's the number I'm gonna go with. Like she looks quite elderly. But she is the matriarch of this family. Basically, she is the brains and the sort of herbalist behind the serums that they come up with. She's the one that kind of collects the roots, collects the herbs and all of that stuff, and makes the serum to sort of that they use to inject these monsters to bring them back into their human form. So it's pretty interesting the way that this works. From what I can tell from the first volume, this family fights monsters that have been turned. They're called Jinnu. They have been turned through hatred and sort of racism and violence and that kind of thing. And they go from human to this inhuman form. And if they have turned, they can be turned back. So basically what Ma Etta does is kind of create this serum to bring them back, cleanse their soul, and bring them back to their human form so they can continue living their lives. It's kind of, and to me, that I thought that was interesting. Instead of just like killing these monsters, they actually see the humanity through the monster side, and so they try to bring them back to humanity, which is definitely not a theme that you see running through monster books. Usually it's like, oh, it's a monster, let's kill it, move on to the next one. So I thought that part was interesting all by itself. So basically some of the other characters in the book, now again, it's all a family, so everybody calls each other cousin. So you have Blink, who is a woman. She's much younger. She looks to be maybe like late 20s. She helps Ma with the serums, with the processing of the roots and the flowers and the plants and all of those things. But Blink doesn't want to do that. Blink wants to be out in the field actually fighting the monsters with her cousins. So some of her other cousins are Cullen, who is very new to this, and he's very, very bad at this. And Berg, who is a heavyset big guy, but he is sort of like that quiet giant type. Kind of reminds me of the character from what's that movie? The Green Mile. He's
Oh,
like
yeah.
basically like a gentle giant.
I thought you were going to say Mice of Men, similar.
Oh, kind of. Yeah. If they were ever to make this into a live action feature, the only person I can see playing Berg is Kevin Griveau, who was in Underworld. He was sort of Lucius's right hand man. He's great. He's got an amazing voice. So basically it's literally a family of demon fighters. So Berg is the muscle. Cullen is new to this. He's really trying to get it, but he's very bad at it. Blink wants to be out there fighting the monsters, but her grandmother, I'm assuming, won't let her because her mother died fighting the monsters, and so her grandmother feels like she has to protect her from the same fate that her mother suffered. So it kind of, reading this book definitely gives you Lovecraft Country vibes, because it's like, yes, we are in a regular like society, but yes, there are also these really ugly things that we have to put away. So they do what they can and they fight the monsters. There's a couple of cops that are kind of hip to the supernatural things that this family takes care of, the Sangheir family. So whenever they run across people that have been turned into monsters, they sort of bring them to the attention of the Sangheir family so that the family can bring them back to their human form. It all kind of goes to hell. We get to a point, there is the family is not all together. There's some drama, as there always is family drama. So there is a cousin, Ford, who is in Mississippi. Now, Mississippi is a long damn way from Harlem. So he's in Mississippi and he's fighting monsters in Mississippi. He comes across a gang of KKK guys that are trying to lynch a black man. And so he kills them, except when he kills them, they turn into monsters. And then he has to kill them again. And one white guy does not turn. And because that guy does not turn into the monster, Ford does not kill him because he says your soul has not been tainted.
Yeah.
And so that guy kind of inadvertently becomes a lackey and just sort of starts to follow Ford around everywhere he goes. And now in my head, if I were casting this, I would cast that guy older and he would be Walton Goggins. Like, I just think that Walton Goggins would be perfect in that role. So, and as far as playing Ford, I would pick Amari Hardwick because he had the mutton chops to play the part, based on his role in Sorry to Bother You, which is a great film if you haven't seen it. So anyway, in Mississippi, we've got more of the Sangheir family fighting demons and monsters and that kind of thing. And down in Mississippi, he's actually chasing what appears to be like a hellmouth. He's chasing this big kind of Jinnu that he realizes is not a man turned into a devil, but he is a devil that is hiding as a man. So he's fighting him, but he thinks that guy is guarding a door to the underworld. So then we start to get into like this deeper mythology about unleashing hell on earth and how do you stop these things from happening. Basically, it's like this amalgamation of like sci-fi horror kind of comic. The art is phenomenal. The art does such an excellent job of keeping you engaged in the battles. It's so good, colorful. It's so vibrant. Yeah, the art is fantastic in here. But the writing is also really, really great. There's so many good moments. Like you can't see this, but like I have all these little Post-it sticky notes on different pages of the book that I wanted to make note of while I was reading. And in Mississippi, the one white guy who does not turn into the Jinnu, he's like, "You killed all these people in cold blood." And Ford is like, "In cold blood? No, I didn't. They were about to lynch a black man. Like, I didn't kill anybody in cold blood. If you ask me, they got what they had coming." And it's just the whole book is filled with these great lines, these great sequences, and the way that they kind of blend the actual events from history with the events in this book is really interesting. And there's a point, so when the main villain reveals himself, and he sort of attacks a bar in Harlem while they're just kind of out having a good time. And the police start to turn into these monsters because the police don't understand that monsters are the reason that people have been disappearing in the parks. They think that Black people are responsible for killing off these victims that they've been coming across. So the police go to this bar and they basically just start attacking the patrons in the bar, trying to get information out of them. Well, in the process of attacking the patrons, the police become overwhelmed with hatred, and that hatred turns them into these monsters. And as the people are fleeing the bar, they run to the Seigneur sort of place of business, the storefront or whatever you want to call it. So now the Seigneurs are trying to fight the monsters, but they also have to worry about how the hell are we going to feed all these people and protect all of these people that have now come to us as like a sanctuary. And basically Blink is like, I don't care about these people. Like, we don't have time to worry about how to feed these people when we have to stop the monsters. But Ma Etta is like, that's not how this works. And basically she has a point where she says, we don't turn our backs on folks in need. That's not the way that we do things. We have to fight the fight, but we also have to feed the hungry. And I thought that was a really great kind of like peek into their character. Like, yes, I understand that we have to fight these monsters, and you're absolutely right. We have to take care of that, but we cannot abandon these people in the process of doing that. So I fell in love with like all of the characters in this book and sort of the herbalism and the rituals that they kind of go through. Now, thankfully, I grew up in a much more modern time where that was not something that we had to worry about. But some of my familial roots are set in Louisiana, and this book to me presents with some of those Creole type traditions of the herbal remedies, or the prayer or the chanting, or what people call voodoo that's not really voodoo or hoodoo. So part of this book feels like, in some alternate reality, this could actually be my own family. So I really, really kind of felt a connection to Bitterroot from the moment that I started reading it. And I loved every minute of it. It was one of those books when we did our March book club. One of the things that our guest had mentioned was that when she first started reading graphic novels, she would forget that she was reading a graphic novel, and she would only focus on the text and then have to go back and look at the pictures in context with the text. And now, when I was reading this book, I did the opposite. I got so wrapped up in the art that I had to stop myself and then go back and read the text to go with the art. So I really love this book. I love this family. I can't wait to pick up volume 2. In fact, as soon as we're done recording, I'm going to hop on Amazon and I'm going to get it. So, yeah, I loved it. I really did. And then at the very back of the book, they kind of put several pages where they actually talk to scholars and professors and researchers and writers about some of the things that they put into the book. So that stuff is really interesting as well to kind of flip through that and read through that. I really enjoyed this book. I love these characters. I can't wait to see what other kind of stuff we get into. And this art, man, oh man, this art is so, so good.
Yeah, there is quite interesting text at the end of each issue, like which covers up, racism or something in each book. So it's actually quite an interesting read. I think you've actually mentioned the art quite a few times. I love the art in this book. Yeah. Even things like just facial expressions, the lining and the detail, and even like characters which literally come in on one page and have killed the next. Yeah. they still get some really good attention to detail. Yeah. I found for me, I found sometimes when I read these things, because there's quite a lot of characters in it and a lot's happened, I didn't find I bonded to it as well as you did, but I've known myself. I know that I have to go back normally and reread something like this if there's quite a lot of people in it and quite a lot going on. So I'm gonna give it a second read. I found that was quite useful for me with V for Vendetta.
V for Vendetta is heavy.
Yeah. This is not as heavy as that, but there was a lot going on, I felt. So yeah. I think it's worth me giving it a second read. But I did enjoy it. I just think that I would definitely benefit from a second read. But I enjoy all the just the craziness of it. Like,
Yes. It's wild. Like some of the things that are happening and the way that, I don't know. I just, the fight sequences, the dialogue, everything in this book is so punchy and so like there's nothing slow about it to me. Even in the scenes where they're not fighting.
So it's a very Lovecraft country, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, technically, Lovecraft Country has some Bitterroot vibes since Bitterroot came first, but still.
Yeah. They've got similarities to each other. So.
Yeah.
But I haven't really got much more to add on this. I think you've covered most of it. But we really rated this strongly. We thought the story was 4 and the art was a 4 as well. That both out of 5. But we were very positive on this.
Yeah, and like I said, I can't wait to pick up volume 2. So the first volume again collects 1 through 5. The second volume collects 6 through 10 plus a special issue. So yeah, I love this family, and I definitely want to see them doing more. Especially, spoiler. So Cullen accidentally gets pulled into some kind of portal to another dimension, another world. I don't know if that's hell or some other place. When he comes back, he is much older, much more grizzlied, much bigger, and far more weathered and capable than when he went in. Because the whole the first 2 issues kind of paints him as like the lackey that is sort of trying really hard, but like not quite there yet. And by the time he comes back in the 5th book, it's kind of like, holy hell, like, you look like a completely different person. So I am super, super intrigued to find out what the backstory is for that. But I did love these characters. And again, some of the things reminded me of some of the stories I've heard from my family back in backwater Louisiana, where they actually still speak Creole. And sometimes you go back for family reunions and I can hear a lot of broken French. Don't always understand what they're saying. But hey, laissez les bon temps rouler.
You probably know far more French than I ever did. And I live far near always used to southern languages. But anyway, so just that was Bitterroot Volume 1 and brings our 3 reviews to a close.
Yeah.
And
busy week, but this was fun. I enjoyed everything that we did this week.
Yeah, it was very educational for myself, I thought. So
well, that's good that geeky things can actually teach you something significant.
I think it's been from the start, from March through actually even Black Cotton, March, and then the 3 that we've done this week, and the other things that we talked about, Nice White Parents, and there's a lot of education for myself, which hopefully people listening will also learn from what we've been reviewing or take an interest enough to go and pick these things up or watch them.
At least open yourself up to the dialogue.
Yeah. To having the conversation that they're uncomfortable conversations, but
nothing changes. Nothing ever changes inside your comfort zone. It always changes outside your comfort zone. So
so we decided to change our recommendations this week to something both of us put forward, a superhero, and going with Black History Month, we both picked black superheroes. So I'm recommending that people, if you don't know about it, and Jasmine did not, Shadow Man from Valiant Comics. And Valiant Comics has been around since the 90s. It's been through many ownership structures, and then they rebooted again, I think it was 2010 or 11, and then Shadow Man got his own series in 2012, which is absolutely brilliant. So he has a new series coming out in April from Cullen Bunn and John Davis Hunt. Shadow Man is, I'm trying to think, probably like action, horror, fantasy, supernatural, that kind of thing. It's very much deals in magic and demons and jumping in and out of sort of I don't know, hell dimensions and that. It's all that kind of thing. But I love every series he's had. But his first one he had from the second relaunch of Valiant in 2012. I love. I've got that all together. I would never get rid of that. But yeah, Shadow Man is a really cool, quite strong superhero character. Has been through a couple of things during his resurrection since Valiant comic relaunch. But yeah, no, I'd recommend picking it up if you like horror and fantasy and action, that kind of thing. It's definitely worth picking it up.
I might check it out.
He's not a superhero in your traditional roots. He does have a costume, but
yes, he does. I saw. He looks pretty cool, actually. Yeah. And my recommendation for this week, in keeping with David Walker, I do enjoy his stuff. Power Man and Iron Fist. When David F. Walker was writing for this series, this was back in 2011. This run is so much fun. I discovered this run after I had seen Luke Cage, and Luke Cage, that series on Netflix, changed my entire perception of what a Black hero could be, because there was so much Black culture in Luke Cage. It was the first time that I had watched a superhero show and felt 100% represented. So after that, I distinctly looked for more Luke Cage stuff, and I stumbled on the David Walker run on Power Man and Iron Fist. It's great. I love the run. It's so much fun. So I would definitely suggest checking out Power Man and Iron Fist.
And next week we will be reviewing. Do you know what? I can't not mention this. I've just seen news pop up that the new Superman apparently is going to be a Black Superman in the movies.
From Ta-Nehisi Coates. Apparently, Ta-Nehisi Coates writing it, who wrote that amazing latest Black Panther run, and J.J. Abrams.
Especially with this episode, I felt sorry. I know we weren't covering news, but it's literally sort of just popped up on my feed. I thought I can't not mention that in this episode.
I think we're a bit early for a Superman reboot, though, if we're being honest.
It annoys me. There's no need for it. Just make up, like kiss and make up. Get him back.
Call Henry Cavill.
Kill Henry Cavill. Get him back. He's a brilliant Superman. There's no need to recast him. There's no need to reboot. I don't know. The trouble with DC, they never commit enough. The
trouble with DC is that their animation doesn't talk to their movie universe. They should probably have at least a conversation with each other.
Let's stop. We could spend another half an hour criticizing DC. Anyway, next week we will be reviewing the first 2 episodes of Superman and Lois from the CW, and we will be starting our March-themed reviews. We're going to be reviewing the Godzilla King Kong franchise, starting with Godzilla from 2014. Mm-hmm. We'll also be joined by Stephen Fox, who is going to be. He's going to be regularly joining us once a month, so you can expect to hear 3 of us next week.
And don't forget, we did start a second podcast series where we tackle some of the most essential graphic novels of all time. Our 5th Late to the Party Book Club episode was March Book 1 by Andrew Aiden and the late John Lewis. That was a great episode. We really enjoyed that. It dropped mid to late February, so be sure to check that out. And we are taking the month of March off. We will be back in April with our Late to the Party Book Club for Akira Volume 1 by Kazuhiro Otomo.
You can also follow us on social media. We're Geeks Unleashed on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
And you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Google, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn. We are everywhere. So be sure to leave us a 5-star review and tell your geeky friends.
Thank you very much for listening, guys. Stay geeky.
Have a good week.